Today's guest is Jamie Sylvian, founder of Executive Nomad and a perpetual traveler who has spent more than 2 decades advising executives, governments, and high stakes organizations across Europe and the Middle East. He's about to tell us where he is and where he's going. So stick around. He teaches seasoned professionals how to rewire, repackage, and repurpose 25 years of corporate experience into high value, location independent consulting businesses. And today he's going to show you how to do the same. Jamie, tell us, where are you at? What you doing? And where are you going?
Hey Lisa, thanks for having me on. I'm currently in Bulgaria because the ski
Mm.
season's just about to start, and this has been my winter base for quite a few years. I just I love coming here. I've got one. I know I've got had an office here for 20 years. It just sits here while I'm traveling. But it's also really well positioned. So when it gets far too cold here, as it does, I can drive down to Greece in 2 hours. I can be in Turkey in 5 hours. It's so well situated, and the internet's fabulous here. So between now and the end of the season, I'll have spent some time in Spain and in Cyprus as well. So that's kind of my next
Mm.
my next few months traveling.
So do you ski? Are you an avid skier?
I would tell you I'm brilliant skiing, but I don't know if everyone would if everyone would agree with that. So, but yeah, I've been doing it long enough to stay upright.
I have a lot of respect for people who can ski. I've tried a couple times and it's harder than it looks.
Yeah, yeah, like anything. Yeah, I can't skateboard, so or snowboard, so yeah, just couldn't get my head around it. So I stick with two. I'm on two sticks, and I'm happy.
So I'd love to get into this conversation about the new work era. So I really feel like a lot of experienced professionals are feeling like they're done or essentially being
Yeah,
pushed out. Why do you
yeah.
think that is? And what's going on with this new kind of work era?
I think there's pluses and there's minuses, like anything. So what I'm seeing out in the marketplace is when people hit the age of 50. It doesn't really matter where what level they're working at. They find it very, very difficult to get back into the job market. And that becomes very difficult for executive level people over the age of 50 because it's really, really difficult to get back into a job in the corporate world that pays the same and has the same responsibilities and the same perks and so on. So because corporates are not built to cater for people as they get to past the 50 age and up to retirement, they're just not geared for it. They're looking for younger, cheaper workers. AI is coming into things as well now, although I personally think that's a plus for our age group. Um, but they're finding it much, much more difficult. But the flip side of that is now this environment, you and I having this conversation, you're in Canada, I'm in Bulgaria. When I head off to Cyprus shortly, I'll take my kit with me in my bag. I continue to do all of my work at exactly the same level wherever in the world I want to be, as long as I've got internet and Zoom in this instance. So there's an advantage. And I think when COVID started, I think people become very, very accustomed to this way of work. And that's opened up an opportunity for older people to look at other ways of, the commute to the corner office, if they're feeling burnt out or they're being laid off.
Yeah. So, I mean, you say redundancy, burnout, and restructuring can actually be a gift. Why do most people misunderstand that?
I think honestly, it's because, and this comes from talking to hundreds of executives. I think when you're in the corporate world, you always know as you're going through and you're going up the corporate ladder, if you want somebody to do marketing, that's Mary down the hall doing marketing. If you would need something to do with accounts, that's Rob upstairs does accounts. There's a whole ecosystem and a whole world that
Mm.
you grow up in corporate, and it's very, very different than being an entrepreneur and doing your own thing. So I think people get roped in by the salary when actually you can make more as a consultant. Not always, of course, not for every job, but consulting fees, mentoring and coaching fees can easily make more than a normal executive salary. But I think they just become comfortable and become institutionalized, I think is a good way to put it. They don't see
100%.
outside of what's outside of that corporate world, that office and that commute.
Yeah. I know when I broke free from corporate land and did my own, started doing my own thing, one of the first things I was like, now I don't have benefits. We're like structured. We're meant to believe that we're supposed to be in this like box, and we're going to receive everything we need from this box and this, like you said, this ecosystem. And when you
Yeah.
break free from that, you learn that there's a whole different world for sure.
Well, I think one of the things I always say when I'm on a call with somebody who's thinking of breaking out of corporate land, that's very American and
It's like
Canadian, by the way.
jailbreak.
I love that one. Yeah. But one of the things I always say to them is like, think back to the over the last month at work, the stuff you've done in that office that you took an hour and a half to get to and an hour and a half to get home from. What is it that you did that you couldn't do if you weren't in that office? And they'll say, well, if I was working from home for a Friday, I'd still manage. I'll say, fine. And what if you weren't working from home? You were working from a co-working space in a harbour in Greece. There's no
Yeah.
difference. So it's a mindset thing, and that's what the rewire part of what I do is about. It resets people's minds. So actually, yeah, if I can work from home, I can work from any home. Any home doesn't have to be in Montreal or London or Berlin. It can be wherever in the world I want to be. And once I get that mindset into their head, I think then people start to realize what's possible.
Yeah, for sure. So you've lived as a perpetual traveler for
Yeah.
decades. So what did this lifestyle teach you about real career freedom?
So what's fascinating is that I really enjoy the corporate world, but only
Mm.
if I'm in control. And that's almost like an oxymoron. I like the cut and thrust. I like the vibe, but I hate the politics, and I needed my energy to sort of be able to think about things and not be tied to the corporate. I went through it. I did it all. I became a managing director of a large company in London. I founded a company that exited in 2016 for quite a sum. I was a joint founder of that. And I've kind of worked within the confines of those boxes. But for me personally, you mentioned the perpetual travel. That was the precursor to digital nomads.
Mm.
If you ask a digital nomad now, they've never heard of that because it was so long. It was so long ago. But there was actually people who were doing this lifestyle, and they were living in. Their office was in New York, and they would live in Mexico because it was cheaper, but their bank was in a different country, and they had this whole ecosystem of freedom, and this was back in the early 90s. So as long as you had a good fax machine, you could do it.
Right.
That's how long ago it was. But when I learned about that, I found an advert for a book, for a series of books that are actually in my other office here, the whole series of the books. When I realized that that was possible, and I started to play about with it and started kind of almost going freelance, I think is the best way to put it. I found that I could do both. I could duck into companies that needed my expertise in communications and my expertise in coming up with strategies and ideas. And then when I finished that, I could just leave. I could get paid and
Mm.
then just disappear for a few months. I'd usually go off to Spain, so I was based in London at the time. And then a month after I'd been, on holiday or sort of sunning myself on the beach, I would then start looking for the next contract. And it actually became that people liked the fact that they didn't employ me because that's holiday and sick and and all the other stuff, the
Right.
benefits. They just brought me in when they needed me. At the time, I used to have just a London-based voicemail phone number. So there was no, at the very, very early days, there was no mobile phones. They would leave me a message and say, get back to me. And I'd have to phone the phone box. It's much easier now, Lisa.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, I can see you in a phone and like one of those London ones with the door closed, doing your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it actually happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you have to have a certain just openness to do that because not a lot of people are so fluid and able to just pick up and go work anywhere. How do you begin to even shift your mindset to believe that that's possible? And when you first started doing that, was it uncomfortable?
It wasn't uncomfortable for me. It was a very natural progression for me. But you're absolutely right, especially people coming out of corporate land, especially that, because
Right,
it's
free, yeah.
so far removed from where they are. And the only thing I can say is do it. And don't commit to it. Just do it. Just take yourself off and do, even if you stay in the job that you're in now, so you still got time left in the role. Take yourself off on not on a holiday, but on a working trip and do
Mm.
it. just understand the kit that you need to do this quality of call. Not just using your phone as a camera doesn't cut it. Just using the cameras on your laptop don't cut it because they're not good enough quality. But my tiny little camera here is, I think it's 1 square inch either way around. It's tiny, but it's 4K, it's quality. This is a great production. This is the kind of quality I always have with my clients. Just do it, just try it, and then think through, what changed? What reduced in your week? What improved in your week? For me, when I'm on calls like this, and I do a lot of podcast calls now, I love the fact that I can do this. I'm in business, I'm dealing with stuff, I'm dealing with people, I'm training, I'm coaching, but I can then just go off for a walk in the mountains at 4 o'clock if that's what I want to do. When
Right.
I was working in the center of London, that wasn't possible. I would have to do a 2 hour train journey to get anywhere. I love London, don't get me wrong, I love the city, but it is a different mindset. But it's all possible these days. It's easy these days, I have to say.
Yeah. So why don't you explain your rewire, repackage, repurpose method in the simplest way possible?
Okay, so many people as they're coming into a space at a certain age, and they're going there, they know they're going to be laid off, or they're getting burnt out and they're not feeling the love for the job anymore. They go to HR, and HR will tell them to upgrade their LinkedIn profile. They'll tell them to go on a job board and tell them to brush up their CV. None of that works when you reach a certain age.
Right.
For certain people, of course it does, but for a very, very big minority, it doesn't. So I say to people, first of all, rewire. Just take a breath and all you need to do is think about 4 or 5 wins, losses, or lessons that you've done in your career that had a real benefit. So just as an example, Steve, who was in the logistics space, he was a chief technical officer, and there was a merger of companies, and he was tasked with fixing up the mess that was two completely different systems. Just as an example, by doing it properly, Steve saved the company $4 million. Just as an
Mm,
example. How many other companies in his space, in the logistics space that Steve's just spent 20 years in, have exactly that problem? Just in his own town or in his own city, in his own country. So rewiring is saying, okay, look, this is one win. I have the ability, because I've got the experience and the skill set, to go in and help a company to help with mergers and acquisitions and systems integrations. Now they've got something immediately that they can offer out into the workspace. Now they
right.
don't need to go and get a job. Now they don't need to consider ageism, because in this instance, in this way that it works, it's only ever about results. I don't care. You can be 150 if you're getting me the results. If somebody has a 5 o'clock fire in their logistics company, and they need it fixed, they want Steve. They don't want somebody who just says, well, I've just come out of university. They want Steve because Steve has seen all of this before. And that
Right.
can't be affected by AI, because Steve is putting together conversation. Goes, I know exactly what happened when this, and this happened. Now, if Steve wants to get into the executive nomad space, he's got to package that. So it's repurpose, repackage. He's got to give that a name. Otherwise, he's just a consultant, and there's a billion of them in the world. So what Steve does, and this is what we teach in Executive Nomad, is that we teach him how to give that service. And he may have 10 of these. He may have worked out 10 of these. We help our clients do it. But he's going to give it a name. So let's say he's Steve, the freight site guy. And his job is to go in to a company that's merging with another company or buying another company and saying, I will make sure that this happens and it is a smooth transition. I will tell you what your problems are before they happen. I will sit here in my office, and I will oversee all of this happening. So Steve's now is he can take that freight site guy label, and it's something that I'd remember as if I was the CEO of a logistics company. Get the freight side guy, that guy. Do you remember the guy? Not, oh, we had a management consultant and he said he could probably help. That freight site guy did exactly this for a company 6 years ago. That's the guy we need to call. So if you just take one, as I said, Steve would have 5 to 10 of these. If he then goes after companies, it's very easy for Steve to know who will have that kind of a challenge, who needs
Right.
him, because he knows what he can do. He knows how he can fix it. Every single person in the whole world that Steve needs to talk to is either on LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, or on Apollo Dario,
Mm,
and that's just a database for companies. So all his potential market is already just sitting there waiting for him. What he's got to do is position himself properly by repackaging and calling it the freight site guy, and that's what the offer is going out. But then he needs to repurpose it, and then now he needs to repackage it. And that's when he thinks, "Oh, I'm in the logistics space, and I've just worked out a whole business, and there's like 3,000 CTOs I can reach out to." But it's not just logistics people who have this problem. Warehousing people are exactly the same problem. Freight distribution companies have the same problem. Steve can work out on a piece of paper all of the companies in the world who need to know the freight site guy. He can position himself to them, and then all he needs to do is a continual process of letting them know who he is. And then his next step, Lisa, is that he needs to step more outside of the position of just being a consultant because there's so many of them. So what I say is you should have yourself a book. And that book doesn't have to be, it's not a novel, and you're not going to put it on Amazon and make a fortune, although you will put it on Amazon, because that's the very, very best in terms of creating credibility. Can you imagine he gets in touch with somebody on LinkedIn and say, Hi, David, you're in Singapore. I was a CTO of this company. You've probably heard of them. I now run the freight site guy. This is what we do. I'd really love to send you my book. It's just been published. All of a sudden,
Right.
he's not a consultant anymore. All of a sudden, he is the go-to expert that they want. The second thing we do is we set up podcasts, this kind of podcast and also audio podcasts. Because the second thing you do is, Steve, I know Steve is talking to David over in Singapore. He said, "Oh no, I know exactly the problem. Why don't you have a look at me? I was on a podcast with Lisa, or I was on a podcast, or here's my podcast again, Lisa." All of a sudden, you're no longer fighting an email inbox because you are one of 50 emails that come through that day. You're no longer fighting just LinkedIn, the LinkedIn email inbox. You are one click away. You send your potential client a link, they've got one click and they're listening to you. And podcasting is huge, and it's growing so fast as a medium, and
Yeah.
it's a very, very way. And now you've got the guy's attention when you talk about how you fix this mergers problem that nearly blew up all these companies and cost millions of dollars. But you were the hero.
Yeah.
That's how the three purposes go, three packages go.
So, why do you think most people underestimate the value of the experience that they already have?
I think it's because I think everyone's different, but I think mainly it's because they didn't see it in its own context. They saw it as a part of everything that they were doing. Oh, now
Okay.
I've got to deal with this. Whereas if you, one of the things we teach is that we say, look, no, you're going to think about this stuff and actually work out what did you do. And so often, Lisa, we're having the conversation, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I did save $4 million on a CTO integration, or I did renegotiate suppliers and we saved $4 million," and they say it almost as a throwaway comment, and I'll say that's it. That's exactly what
Yeah.
you're supposed to be offering. That's a brilliant offer you've got. But they didn't see it because of the context of A, being employed, being a part of a big team is just one cog in the wheel. And I just think they have to kind of step outside of that world just for a little while to think things through and say, I did that, and that's what I can offer into the marketplace.
Right. I remember an old CEO that I used to work for used to call us all cogs, and I used to drive me nuts. It used to drive me
It's so
absolutely
rude.
nuts.
Yeah, yeah. Cogs.
Um,
So that's so offensive.
yeah. And he would say it at like the Christmas party at the speech, and I was always thinking like, why are you saying that to all of us? Like, are you serious right now?
It's just cogs.
What not to do?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh my God. So, what skills do you think is most in demand right now?
So, yeah, actually, I was having this conversation the other day. So, what's happening is so many people, there's all obviously talk everywhere about AI. And we use a lot of
Yeah.
AI in the company, right? But some people are scared of it. And as people get older, they're less inclined to be using it. You've got somebody at 22 years of age, they're using it all the time. Somebody at 52 years of age, not necessarily using it so often. But there's definitely changes coming in the marketplace. But what's happened is as people are losing their jobs because of AI, there's a whole raft of people coming in who are fixing the problems that AI have caused. So
Yeah.
just because you can go onto any of the AI the LLM platforms and it will spout some rubbish if you give it an opportunity. But companies have spent the last year thinking it's the be all and end all. I think made by humans will definitely be coming back, and I think the value of an executive nomad is that AI and the way businesses are run, they can only run on data, past data. It's data collected. AI can only give you an answer based on what it knows from past. Whereas if I'm speaking to a CEO with a 5 o'clock fire and they're saying, we really need help with this, I'm using my perspective and I'm putting my slant, my human-made slant on things, and I say, "Oh, what about this? What about that? What about trying this?" AI can't do that in the same way that a human can do, and AI definitely can't pick up the phone and talk to somebody that I dealt with the same problem a year ago, who's still delighted that we happen to be there to give them a hand. So I think I think executives, not just nomads, I think executives will see a dip, but then they will, I think, made by humans will come back in the next year. And I think it'll have a premium as well.
Yeah. The internet is saturated with AI right now. Like it's very
Yeah.
obvious. Now it's obvious what AI is, but then when a real human writes something, you can tell. Like I'm like I get excited about it because I'm like, oh, they actually took the time to use their brain and write all that stuff out. So I'd have
Yeah.
to agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, humans have to come back full swinging for sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that I think there's another thing is that if there's all of these startups that are going on, they still need to go and get funded. One of the most important things, and I did this because I worked in capital raise for 4 years. If you've got a group of 22-year-olds, they can know everything there is to know about AI. But when they go into a room that has got a suited and booted bunch of investors, there's nothing better in that room than grey hair in the room on their side, because otherwise they look like kids and they're all excited about what they've got. If there is a steadying influence there, the daddy figure really, really talks well to finance companies and to private equity and so on, VCs.
Yeah. So how does someone know if consulting is the right next step for them?
Well, I suppose I think they first of all they need to know that it's time for a change. If they love the corporate world, then stick with it. You may not have that choice, frankly.
Yeah.
It may not love you anymore. Um, But I think to know whether it's for them is to know whether they feel comfortable once they've gone through the rewire and they think actually that is something I can offer. Would you feel comfortable going back to our avatar we talked about earlier, the CTO guy in logistics? Once he's thought all of this through, does he think actually I can see myself doing that? I can see myself doing that. That's the very first thing. Does he feel comfortable? There's work to do. It's like you've got to take this stuff seriously. But if you feel you can do it, the technology that builds setting up the company, all of that stuff is just stuff to do. Whereas if you feel that I've got, a bunch of projects that I've worked on that I can rename, rewire, repackage, repurpose, and give value, am I comfortable doing it in this environment? Do I need to be in the room with people? If you do, you can also do that. You can just be more executive than no. Now that's fine too. There's no reason why not. But for me, I'll be in Cyprus for a couple of months shortly, and I'll be working from there. I'll still be dealing with clients in America, in Canada, in Asia, in the UK. I'll still be dealing globally. But when I finish work for the day's mine, and I'm near the beach in Cyprus. I'm big on Cyprus, so it's a lot. It is very much just a lifestyle thing. But you've got to feel comfortable that you've got the confidence to go out there. And remember, I deal with executives. They got where they are because of confidence. I don't think I've ever met anyone. They're worried about the infrastructure. They're terrible at selling or they're terrible at admin. All of that stuff, that's natural. And we work through that. But I don't think I've ever met a shy executive.
I was just gonna say, like you work with executive founders, governments, what kind of separates those who succeed from those who stay stuck?
I think I think it's the size of the company. I think the higher in value the company that you're an executive of, you are so tied up in all of the packages and the perks and all of that stuff. That it
Hmm.
gets harder. I think it's very, very hard for local authority people who've worked for governments to say, again, because they work in a box, they work in a boxed environment. Then with all of the perks, all of everything that goes on, to think that they can actually become an entrepreneur and run their own show, I think it can be a challenge. But again, it goes back to what I said when you rewire, all of a sudden there's that epiphany. You go, wow, I did this, and there's people who pay for that service. And talk to your friends about it. If you're not sure, tell your friends you're thinking of going out on your own. So not necessarily as an executive nomad, but just as doing your own thing. See what your friends think, because if you've got the right friends who give you the right advice, they say, I can see you doing that.
Mm.
You're not a wallflower. You'll get out there and do your thing. It's not for everybody, but if you feel like it's time to take control, then I think it's a great life. I think it's a lovely life.
So, what does freedom-based career actually look like beyond the Instagram version that we see?
That's why it's executive nomads, not digital nomads. I can promise anybody, you only go on Instagram, on TikTok, you see digital nomads, obviously normally younger people, of course, and it's all about the digital nomad life, and they're on the beach on their laptop. I can promise you that you take your laptop on the beach, you're going to be sorry.
Yeah.
It's a horrible experience. But I suppose the difference is, I'll give you an example of earlier this year. So I went to Spain for 2 months to work. My very, very first day in Spain, I take myself a day to make sure I've got everything I need. But then my next day is a co-working space, and I paid a couple of $100 for the month. I had my own desk, and I went to work every day. I had my kit set up. I never took my stuff to the beach. I do phone calls when I'm walking around, and I'm walking around in Newtown and so on. But I'm very clear with my clients that I'm not going to be on screen, and I'll tell them, if you want to call them, great, but it's on phone. Once you've got the relationships with the client, nobody minds that. It's not a problem at all.
Yeah.
I think you've got to structure it. It's still a business. Your clients still need to be, they still need to manage you. And you may get a job with a client, or a contract with a client that lasts for 6 months, and it's a 5 grand a month job. You can live wherever you want in the world once you
Yeah.
once you land a few of those contracts. So I think that's really important, but it's still a business. You're running a business, and you still need to do some PR work. That's easy enough once you know how to do it. You get your public relations stuff out there, get noticed. But also, I think bear in mind that if you're somebody who hates being on LinkedIn, as an example, bearing in mind lots of our clients are there, there's always a virtual assistant for 400, maybe $500 a month who'll take care of all of that for you, right
Mm.
up to the point where twice a week you have client phone calls. There's ways to do it, especially now that mean you are not 9 to 5 by any stretch of the imagination, and you're still able to earn an executive income and have the freedom.
Mm. What about some sacrifices or realities that people should understand before they jump into this world?
One of the toughest things when I was starting out was the transience of it, not for me, but it was when you're trying to make friends when you land in a place. I remember landing in Chiang Mai in Thailand and I'd rented a house, and it was going to be lovely. I found it really difficult to make friends, and it was the first time I'd experienced it, because normally I'll
Mm.
find the places to go and get to meet people and so on. What happened was, as I started to position myself as an executive nomad, not just somebody traveling around, I started giving myself a brand. People realize how transient you are. They don't invest time in a relationship with you if they know that you're probably going to be gone in 3 months' time.
Right. Yeah.
So that became tricky, and it became vice versa. I thought how rude. 3 months later, I was doing exactly the same when I was meeting people. So what I started to do was start to build out relationships globally. So when I was in Chiang Mai, I had one of the guys I met, and we got on great. We actually shared an office. Went off to He was German. He went back to Berlin. I went to Berlin and worked for 3 months.
Oh,
So
cool.
that so so it changes, but it's definitely something. And For some people, you can also feel like you're living out of a suitcase a little bit. If if it's not something you can, but you shouldn't do it 1 week here, 1 week there, and so on, because you'll never unpack your suitcase. But imagine if you could today decide you're landing a contract. It's a 3 month contract. I know I can do it from anywhere in the world, so I go on Airbnb. That's what I did for Cyprus. I know what my next 3 months is going to look like. I'm going to do it from Cyprus or Chiang Mai in Thailand or New York or London or wherever I want to be. That to me, you land, you've got 3 months, you've got plenty of time to see stuff. You've got plenty of time to jump on Internations, which is a global networking website. There's always local groups, Facebook groups, and so on. And people are pretty much, they're very accommodating. It's just that deeper level of relationships has always been a bit tougher.
Do you have a funny story of making it work? Because right now I'm picturing the internet's not working, you're in a new place, you don't know where to go, you don't know what to do. Do you have a funny story of that?
Less so now, I have to say, because internet everywhere is much better.
Yeah,
There
you
is
learn your lessons.
nothing worse than that you're about to take a call and it's a 20, $30,000 contract, and all of a sudden, for some reason, the microphone's not working or the internet's buzzy.
Yeah.
And that used to happen. That used to happen a lot. I've worked all of that stuff out now, so it very, very rarely happens. And also, as a stopgap, wherever I land, I make sure that I've got my own internet with me. I make sure I test all of the internet, so I never have calls for the first. I try and land on a Saturday. That's kind of my plan, because that gives me a couple of days. And if I've got a co-working space, I'm pretty sorted anyway. They've always got T1, the best kind of internet that you can have, just because of the nature of their role. So it doesn't happen as much. I have had. I was in Thailand in Chiang Mai, and I used to use an office was actually in an elephant park. It was a cafe above an elephant park,
The
and
elephant part?
yeah. So everyone used to think that was the coolest place in the world to have an office. And it was, until two bull elephants down on the park started having a disagreement, and nobody could hear a word that I was saying. And I was presenting to I think
Yeah.
20 people. All you could hear is elephants. And then I've got to explain that there's two elephants just down below me.
Yeah.
So yeah, stuff happens, but you've got to laugh about it too. This life, that's life. I never worry too much about it.
Yeah, and it makes you more real, right? Like when you can laugh about it and just be
Yeah,
authentic, people appreciate that.
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure they do.
So if someone listening right now is like, "Oh man, I'm tired, I'm burnt out, I'm scared of what's next." What would you say to them? Because there's that point where you're tired, you're burnt out, but you're like that holy shit moment of like breaking free and you have no idea what's going to happen.
I think if somebody's going through that, then you need clarity.
Mm,
Because clarity, if you get clarity, you can then take a breath and say, okay, now I know what to do. That panic feeling is because you don't know what's next. Whereas
right.
if you say, I can have a plan here, I know what I can do, and it's low risk. You're not forking out on a franchise or a business opportunity. You're not going crazy at stuff. You can work out how to be a nomad quite quickly, how to be a consultant quite quickly. One of the things that I've built, because I think AI is going to be important going forward, and I used to have long meetings, like discussions like this. They used to take about 90 minutes to sort of work out with people what it was that they could offer. I have an app now that does it in about 2 minutes, because
Mm,
I basically fed all of my experiences to the AI, and said, if somebody's experience as being a chief marketing officer within a local authority, a local government, what could they offer? Well, what was their win, loss, or lesson? And then it will give a whole bunch of stuff that they could think about doing. They could spend as much time, spend an evening on that, working out a whole load of things. And then I've got a book that people can read. This is all on executivenomad.com. It's all free. They can go and use it. And then they can listen to the podcast, watch the podcasts, and really get a feel for, if this is something that they can do. I run a webinar once a month, which is a Q&A session with anybody who wants to throw questions at me. I've been doing this long enough, I think, to have seen everything at least once. Explore it, explore the idea. If this is something that you think works, explore the idea. There's no harm in it.
Yeah. So you just let everyone know where they can find you. What is the very first step that people should take if they're like, I'm in?
Try the app. Go and have
Yeah.
a go at the app because the app will tell them what they need to know. And then the scorecard, I think, is really important. The scorecard basically is a readiness scorecard. You go through it, asks you a bunch of questions, and tells you it's quite informative because it tells you how far away you are from being an executive nomad. So what's your job now? What do you need? Where do you want to be? Not everybody wants to travel the world like this, but you can also do this stuff from a spare room in your where you live right now. Some of the
Yeah.
some of some executive age people are not ready because they've got grandkids now or kids in university, but if they can at least plan ahead, Lisa, and see where they want to be with it.
Yeah. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. Do you have any last minute thoughts you want to leave the audience with today?
Yeah, I think if this is something that if you are feeling burnout and you are feeling that life change, I've been doing this for so long that I didn't even realize it had a value for so long that people actually want to know this stuff. And it's so much easier now than phone boxes and fax machines. It's such a
Mm,
nice way of doing business. So you can finish a meeting here and step outside, and then you can be wherever you want. You can go and explore new cities. You can go and sit on the beach. You can do what you want. It's so much a mix of lifestyle and income. And it really is, if you're struggling with ageism in the marketplace or in the workplace, you may not have an option. You need to do something. So this
yeah.
is this is this is the lowest risk you can possibly do, and it's the easiest one because you're not starting from scratch. So I think it's worth looking at if you're in that position where you're burnt out and you just think life needs to change a little bit.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. It was so much fun talking
Yeah,
to
it's
you.
my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yes. And to our audience, please do not forget to like and subscribe. And if you have the itch to become an executive nomad, we will have all of those links in our show notes for you to check out Jamie's stuff. Until next time, take care, everyone, and keep life interesting. Go play with some elephants or something. I know I'm tempted to now. Bye for now.
Yeah, indeed.